pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the meeting held January 24th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, special reports. Presentation by Mr. Mudry concerning Johnston Road.
So at council's request, we've asked Mr. Mudry to take a look at Johnston Road. There have been a couple accidents recently that's caused us to once again want to focus on that. Mike, if you want, you can be in control.
Which one?
The one that to the yes, there you go. You're pointing back this way to change. Either that, Mike, or I'm doing this. Go for it.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Mike Mudry with Traffic Planning and Design, your consulting traffic engineer. Nice to meet a few of you. Nice to see some old faces again. A few of you might have been here back in 2013. You know that the area of Johnston Road and the Center Church South area was a traffic calming study done in 2013. And I just wanted to bring back some old data from that just to do a little comparison between now and then. Back in 2013, we did some traffic counts on Johnston Road and Green Valley Lane. You could see the 24-hour traffic count was 1925 vehicles a day. That's both directions. 85th percentile speed was 46 miles per hour. As a result of the traffic calming study, we installed some speed display signs, one in each direction on Johnston Road, and we also installed the all-way stop at Center Church and Johnston Road. Johnston Road is defined as a collector road. It has a 25 mile per hour speed limit. If you look in the ordinance law, collector roads, their target speed is 30 to 40 miles per hour. So we're kind of fighting downhill on the type of road that it's classified as to try to get speeds down. If you're familiar with this area, you know the roadway, particularly the part up on Center Church, between Center Church and 140 Johnston Road. It's 20 foot wide. There's no shoulders, no wedge curb, no wedge lines. There's no recovery area. I mean, this is basically people's front yards, lots of trees, lots of mailboxes, things of that nature. And in fact, there's one area where there's a tree actually out into the road, and the road kind of sneaks around it. It's 19 foot there. Here's some pictures. There's the tree up in the top left corner. Some other pictures. You can see that one day I was out in snow. The other day it was nice out. But you get the idea. There's no shoulders. There's not even a wedge curb out there like we have in our newer subdivisions with I think the standard's 24 foot with the wedge curbs on each end. So you can see that this is a higher order road, but it's lacking those features like wedge curbs or shoulders. Here's what we found with some traffic data that we collected recently. Good news is speeds are down from when we did the traffic calming originally. We had a counter up at 114 Johnston Road. The traffic 24-hour count is 2114 vehicles a day. The 85th percentile speed is 34 miles an hour. And down at 151 Johnston Road, the traffic count is 1532 vehicles per day. And the 85th percentile speed is 35 miles an hour. As Paul mentioned, there were some crashes, and I was kind of surprised at the number of crashes. So this is a 5-year crash history from 2017 to 2021. It's a total of 15 crashes. There is a cluster in the maps on the next page. I'll show you after we go through these numbers real quick. There is a cluster of those crashes here between Center Church and 140 Johnston Road. And it's, you know, it kind of caught my eye because I wouldn't expect to see that many in that time period in this small of an area. The crashes are hit fixed object, which is really running off the road and hitting mailboxes and trees and landscaping. Runoff road where they completely ran off the road and the car was disabled and couldn't be moved off the side of the road. There was one deer crash, 2 angled crashes. One person was pulling out of a driveway. The other one was, that was the one at Green Valley where there was a DUI. And then there was an object in the roadway. There was a tree branch that fell down and somebody hit it at speed. Reportable and non-reportable, that's kind of a PennDOT police technical term. Reportable crash is something where Either there's a minor injury or the car is in condition that it needs to be towed away. Non-reportable means nobody's hurt, the person was able to drive away. It's a little bit misleading because you can totally run off the road through someone's yard, but as long as you can get back in the car and get it back on the road and drive away, it's typically a non-reportable crash. Here's a map of the crashes that we were looking at. The yellow dots are the non-reportable crashes, the red dots are the reportable ones. And again, like I said, the one up at the higher end on the left side of the page going from Center Church all the way over to Longview Drive there in that area, that's a number of crashes that I wouldn't expect to see in that small of an area over 5 years. And again, one of them's a DUI, the other's someone backing out of their driveway. The third red dot closer towards Longview, that is someone that went off the road and couldn't get their car back out. They had to have it towed out. The other ones are all those yellow dots. Those are people where, I think there was one gentleman had his mailbox hit 3 times. A couple other mailboxes, someone's decorative brick column in the side of the road, landscaping that's been hit. So what it's telling me is people are missing the curve, so to speak. And it is kind of deceiving if you're familiar with the area. Johnson Road obviously is an older type road. It's not a subdivision that we plan out and, it's a perfect 200-foot curve, say. What I've noticed is as you approach the curve, it kind of starts gradually and then the curve actually takes place. So people, it seems like they're missing the initial part of the curve, whether it's lack of signing or lighting or some delineators out there. That seems to be the type of thing that's going on out there. People are just missing the subtlety of the curve in this area. You want to go ahead? So talking over with Mr. Zamitis, we talked about some recommendations. What would we do for something like this? And Mr. Arcuri, with the traffic calming committee, we like to try to take some steps. Like we don't throw 30 things at once and see what happens. Right. I thought the best approach here would be to upgrade signings and pavement markings and things like that. So there's signs out there now. There are some curve signs out there. I think the first thing to do is go out and check the reflectivity of those. And if they're even 10 years old or older, probably just replace them. They're probably beyond their useful life. There are these slow curve pavement marking signs that PennDOT's had a lot of success with. They've had 40 to 50% reductions of crashes using this type of curve pavement marking on the road. Again, it's a pavement marking application that the township could either contract out or do themselves. Good, Paul. Curve delineation, you can see the flexible delineator post. One thing you do notice if you're up there on Johnson Road, a lot of people have their own homemade deflector or reflectors or things that they're sticking, and some people have some like highlighted tape taped around some of the trees up there and things like that. There's people already doing this kind of on their own. I think it would be best if we went out and had some of the standard highway type delineators put in. Another thing, some street lighting would help coming into some of these curves. And like I said, there are a few trees that are right up against the road that, if somebody hits them, that's going to be...
Are they in the right of way?
Yes, trees in the right of way. The right of way. And that's something me and Mr. Zamitis would have to go over. We'd have to see what things are in the right of way and really find those trees. There's a couple trees out there that are actually, you see some damage on them. It looks like somebody hit a couple of them. And maybe they're not getting reported to the police because, again, if you brush up against something and you can keep going, these people, they don't stop, they don't report the accident. So it's not in the database. So I would expect there are a number of crashes that we don't know about out there.
So a couple of quick questions.
Sure, go ahead.
The speed variance, so 46 down to 34 miles per hour, what do you attribute the difference to that? Could it be the time of year, so people were driving slower in the winter because their roads weren't good, and back in 13 it was done during the summer? Or why do you think that is such, that's a big difference in speed.
Well, I think we've done a lot with the speed display signs. There's a couple on Center Church further up, and then we have the pair down here on Johnson Road. So I do think they work. I'm surprised that they're working that much, but they do work. And just to get some comparison of the numbers, I did go out and measure the speed twice in those locations. So it was on 2 different days.
And then those accidents that are reported, do you know if they were, what percentage were during the day and what percentage were at night?
It's in the data. I don't have that handy, but it's in the data. There were a number of nighttime accidents. Some of them are the mailbox loads getting hit You don't know when that happened because the person woke up, they went out, they see a mailbox, they don't know when it happened. So,
Thank you.
sure.
I have a question for you, Mike. The actual road as it presently exists, is there like a white berm line going down the middle, or is there a line down the middle or anything like that? Because I remember there was some road, and I can't remember where it was, but this was several years ago. I thought it was up one of those roads off of Just About. You might remember, Paul. I don't recall, but we ended up putting like white lines on the side and something in the middle or something
We
like
did
that.
on McClellan, because it's a narrow road, we put white lines on the edge so that you could actually see the edge of the road. It's very dark down there as well.
Yeah.
And
So with this one, there is a double yellow line.
Oh, there is in the middle? Okay.
But the problem is when you're up at the top part on that stretch that we're talking about where the crashes are.
Okay,
I mean, we could put a white line down, but by the time you paint a white line with the double yellow, now you're down to like a 9-foot lane, basically.
Okay.
I mean, we could put it there. I just think that, that'll become a maintenance issue because it'll be, the lines will be constantly being driven over and they'll wear down faster. So, the paint lines won't even last 6 months out there. Something like this, I mean, if this was a bigger project type thing, you can do edge line, those rumble strips on the edge lines,
Yeah.
but you need a 4-foot shoulder to put them in and make them effective.
Okay.
Here's some other things that I looked at and said, hey, if the recommendations we just talked about don't work, we do a phased approach. This would be some other things, like if we come back and there's another crash, or if we're still having issues up there. Here's some of the things that you could consider. The centerline rumble strips. I think pavement conditions not conducive to them right now, and also it seems the people are going off to the road on the right, not crossing the center line, so the center line rumble strip really would mitigate that. The raised reflective pavement markings, there's little discs that they put down the center, but they're a nightmare with snow plows popping them off.
Right.
I
But
still
they
wouldn't.
are effective.
What's that?
I do believe they are quite effective. in
They
delineating.
are, but just as, again, the same thing with the centerline rumble strips. I think it's pavement condition up there. If we start trying, you have to like you have to scrape into the asphalt to set them down so the snow plows don't run over them. I'm just worried with the condition of the road that's something we start going in and grinding out for these pavement markings. We'll be doing damage to the road actually. They're better suited for when you're repaving the road and you're doing them as you're repaving them. Same thing with the rumble strips. So if it comes down to, I don't know when the next time that road would be paved. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the next time that road's paved, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, I mean, that's certainly something, rumble strips and
Okay.
the in-pavement reflectors we can look at. And then there's some traffic calming stuff at the bottom that I know everybody loves, but we don't have to talk about those. Mr. Lewis loves traffic calming, so. But again, there are other things that are more construction type things where we would actually be changing some physical aspects of the roadway that we could look at. So again, my conclusion would be that we look at signs and reflectors and pavement markings and maybe some lighting out there.
I think you start out simple and see what that,
Right.
if that helps.
Right.
And then if it doesn't, if it doesn't, you gotta go do more.
Are the reflectors that you are hypothesizing, like those that we put out in front of the new high school ramp?
yes. Yes.
Yeah, these are we call them candlesticks. They're like that high, they're white, and then they have a strip of reflective tape on the top, so at night they light up and shine
And they
back
would be
at
on
you.
the side of the road.
Yeah, they'd be a foot or two in the side. They're a couple foot down in the ground to give them a little stability, but they're still flexible if you hit
A
them.
little slow, like with the arrow.
There's some of those signs out there. Like I said, I want to go out and check those signs. If they're old enough, they should be replaced because the reflectivity of those signs goes
Yeah.
pretty quick. So again, signs, some pavement markings, possibly talk with Mark about investigating some street lighting out there maybe on some of those curves. There are utility poles out there. I just don't know if they're in the exact right spot where we'd want a street light. So we'd have to see what the electric company would do for us if it was in a spot where they don't have a pole. Would they be willing to?
Would your neighbors find streetlights acceptable?
My part of the street, I think it'd be fine because really,
You're far enough away.
my house would pretty much be the only one affected. There's no house that's right up on the road there.
And we don't put streetlights out unless we contact people to get their input on doing that. So.
There's a pole right outside my driveway.
The simplest stuff that you suggest, check the signs, make sure they're still, if they need redone or, new ones, we do that. We put those candlesticks in, and we put some of that signage, like the little arrows,
Right.
little curves. I mean, that's basic.
Right.
It doesn't affect the roadway, and it's the starting. That's what I would do, is do the starting.
Right.
And then if it doesn't help, then we would have to consider other things.
And again, I'm going to talk to Mark too. I think, the next time this road would be on for repaving, maybe that's a time where you don't have to take the entire stretch of roadway and put a shoulder out there, but maybe on some of these curves, we could do a little bit of widening to get a little shoulder so we can get some of those edge rumble strips and some of those reflectors through just the curves there to help.
Yeah.
But again, that's more of a,
Yeah.
we got to have a capital item that we're planning for. It's not, hey, we can go out here next couple of weeks and make some changes.
No, that makes sense to me, and I think your analysis about the middle of the road and almost, I don't think that we need that, because it seems from what your position is that everything's to the right. So
Right,
for the most part.
Right,
So I don't think, why mess with the middle if you don't have to?
right.
That makes sense.
No, I agree. I just want to get the problem resolved, because in the last couple of years, we've had a couple, this was it 2 months ago, we had a near fatality out there. I agree with you, the trees are part of the problem.
Right.
Just specifically a certain oak tree there that they paved the road around, but, if people would drive the speed, the tree wouldn't be a problem. But
Right.
what happens is, if somebody cuts you off and you've got nowhere to go, you're going into the tree.
Right.
But I think the quicker we can do something that's not that invasive, the better, at least, because it's got to help. It can't hurt.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mudry.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, the second item under special reports is a presentation by, what is it, Al Nyer? I can't tell if that's an
I think it's A.L. Nyer.
Nyer,
Is that what it is?
Al Nyer.
Al Nyer, okay.
Okay, it's for proposed multifamily residential development on property located at 259 Galley Road. It's including a request for relief from certain township regulations.
So let me begin by providing a little bit of background information. So what's being proposed on a 10-acre site that is bordered by Water Dam and Galley Road is a multifamily development. And because the proposed development requires changes to the zoning ordinance as well as variances, the developers asked for the opportunity to address the Planning Commission, which they've already done, and to address council prior to finalizing acquisition of the site. So what's being requested is that the township consider changes to its zoning ordinance and removing the restriction that multifamily dwellings in this zoning district be limited to 36 units. And then also to eliminate the requirement for off-street parking, which is actually a requirement in all zoning districts that have multifamily dwellings. So to kind of give you an idea of what this means, this is the type of multifamily units that were being developed in the late 70s, 80s, 90s. These are, kind of garden apartments. They're limited to the number of units that are in that building. This one here is actually has 3 levels. There's a level in the basement and the 2 levels up above. So what they're proposing is to be able to build something that is a much more substantial structure than that, and they can show you what they're proposing for the site. The other thing is we don't have a lot of rental properties, but the few we do, there is required covered parking, and that parking, these are examples of what that parking looks like, and this is an area where I think anybody who looks at this doesn't necessarily see this as an attractive amenity for a multifamily dwelling, except for the fact that in the wintertime your car is out of the weather. The other thing that they're requesting are 2 variances. So in this zoning district, as is in the case of the town center, there's a requirement that the buildings actually be pulled towards the road. And the idea is to take all the parking and place it into the interior of the site. So the reason why they need a variance is that the building, as they propose to do it, would be located back in this area. Hold on one second. Back in this area, and the parking would be up against Water Dam Road. The second part of this is that, just as there is in this zoning district, there's a requirement that if you go up for 4 stories, that there be setbacks on upper elevations of the building. So, this is an architectural rendering of what the waters looks like. And when it went up to 4 stories, you had to step this section of the building back even further from the road. One of their points is that, and they can make this argument, that if you're granted this variance and this building now sits at least 100 feet back off the road, does it make sense to have the 4th story being set back?
That's kind of bootstrapping, Mr. Lauer.
Yeah, well, the thing is, and this is, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, 100 feet isn't that far off. It's so. But
So how far is the Waters building off the Valley Road? Maybe 30?
25.
yeah, and so what I would argue, if you go across the street to Brewster's and look up at the building, now you're 100
Right.
feet away. So it's still an imposing structure. But I think the other thing that this whole requirement was attempting to get to was to have buildings that have architectural relief. And so if they were granted a variance for the site, I think what we would want to see is that there be a structure that provides architectural relief. These are renderings that they've provided, and in my mind, that's more than just a box. And so, I think you're accomplishing that same goal. But you have representatives here from Alnire, and they can tell you what it is they're trying to do.
Well, before they start, can I ask a question? The repealing of the ordinances that's in your report that you talked about, does it only affect that parcel, or are there other parcels that are zoned that way that repeal would affect other parcels' development?
So the first would affect anything that's in that zoning district, and that zoning district runs.
From along the Route 19 corridor from approximately McDowell Lane south is the MA1 Mixed Use Activity Center 1 zoning district. So if we change that 36, that would affect that area only.
Yeah. But
On both sides of the road?
Yes.
Yeah, but if you look at that area, correct me if I'm wrong here, Ed, I think this is the last parcel of significant size that could be developed.
Correct.
Is this where that guy proposed the hotel?
Yes.
Behind Miller.
So
Parkway.
the second zoning change actually goes across multiple zoning districts where you have multifamily, and it would eliminate these covered parking in each of those districts. And quite frankly, given what we have seen, I'm not sure that that's not a bad idea. So.
Now, are these going to be rental units, or are they rental units?
Rental units, yes. So I guess I'll just start introducing myself. I'm Mike Gillette. I'm with Gateway Engineers. We're the civil engineer assistant Al Nyer through this development. Alongside me is Pat Byrne. He's with the developer Al Nyer. And then also with us is Lauren Wright, who is with Piper O'Brien Hare. He's helped with the architecturals to date. So I just wanted to kind of touch base. I think Mr. Lauer did a great job of capturing, what we're trying to put forth in front of you guys today. I'll just go through all 4 of the items that we're discussing, kind of just give our interpretations here and things that we've discussed, and further elaborate and answer any questions you guys have. First being going back to the 36 units per structure. I don't really have much else to add other than, I think what Mr. Lauer showed with the photos kind of go with what the intent was for this development. We want to try to stay away from doing that barrack-style look of, if we were to do this development meeting that ordinance, we would likely have 7 to 8 very similar-looking structures stacked within our site that would make it look really kind of mundane and kind of that older retro look, 70s, 80s, and 90s that we're trying to get away from. So that was kind of the whole purpose is to requesting relief from that 36 units per structure requirement. The second being the 50% sheltered parking requirement. We are at this point trying to come as close as we can to meeting that requirement. At this point, I think we've got a conceptual layout that shows covered parking for about 30 to 40% of the overall parking. Right now, we're kind of at a struggle. A lot this size, to meet that parking requirement, we'd be looking at adding another story to our parking deck. I think through discussions with staff, it sounds like the intent for this covered parking was to essentially provide a barrier or a buffer of on-site parking with adjacent properties and nearby roadways. So I think if we were to try to meet that and add another level to our parking, we'd kind of be undoing what we're trying to do there. In addition to that, I think the way we laid the site out, we're trying to utilize as much of the existing vegetative screening as possible. So our site's not going to be immediately right up on Water Dam Road. We're going to be off 100 feet, and we're going to have a pretty decent vegetative buffer that we can look at here shortly. The third item was the 4th-story step-back requirement. The way the zoning ordinance defines this requirement is the 4th story should be stepped back 50 feet from property line and 20 feet from the 3rd-story facade line, fronting Route 19, Water Dam Road, and Galley Road. So we understand this ordinance is likely put in place to prevent buildings along these roads from providing like a towering or tunneling effect, as you would typically see as you'd go down like downtown Pittsburgh. You got these towering buildings left and right. So we can understand what the step back is. What we're proposing with putting this building off 100 foot from approximately 100 feet from Water Dam Road is we would be set back enough. You really wouldn't see the full building aesthetic unless you drove onto our site. So we'd like we're not really asking for a text amendment at this point. In that case, we just kind of wanted to open the dialogue, in preparation of submitting for a land development application. And then the last one being the maximum 25-foot front yard setback requirement. The way the ordinance reads is that the 25-foot maximum is for purposes of courtyards, plazas, outdoor dining, et cetera. I think there's just maybe some interpretations we need to maybe have on our end before we do the submission. But I think the intent there was so that you do have some plazas and buildings aren't right up to the sidewalk. You're giving yourself a little bit of separation, but not too much separation that you have a huge courtyard and you can't see anything. In this case, like I mentioned, we're just trying to almost have a campus feel, keep the facilities all off of Water Dam Road, 100 feet, so that we do have a bit of a separation there. So we're not really proposing any plazas or anything along this corridor. I think if you look at how the rest of that corridor was developed, I think you got parking pretty much the whole way through. So we're kind of in line with what's currently already shown there. So based off of that, we're obviously not asking for a motion or anything today. We're just looking for another endorsement similar to what Planning Commission did, so that staff could go ahead and push through the text amendment process to help us get some relief from some of these items.
Is access going to be that you're proposing, is it going to be from Galley Road or from Water Dam Road?
So we actually have two points of access. There's one on Water Dam, which is on your right-hand side there, and then one also on Galley, which is to the south. The one to the south is more so going to be like an emergency access. The main access would be off of Water Dam at this point.
If you don't get the variance, how many units do you lose, if any?
I think we would, Lauren, do you happen to, I think we would pretty much have to blow this site up to meet that.
Okay. I figured it just comes down to dollars and cents, and depending how many units you lose, depends on, A, what you pay for the property, and B,
Right.
is it worth doing?
So I think, and Pat, if you want to kind of speak this a little bit more, I think the programming that NIR is looking for here is they want larger type facilities where you don't have those 4 or 5, 7-unit facilities where everyone has, steps and everything.
Yep.
The way they kind of lay this out is, we'd have elevators, they'd have the nice site amenities that can be shared within larger facilities that you wouldn't necessarily have with like a 36-unit
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, and I would just add to that we really want to deliver best-in-class development here. And just looking around at contemporary Class A projects, we don't feel that we can provide the same level of amenities and quality of the end product. And we feel like if we were restricted to that 36-unit max, that it's really going to take away from the value, the quality, and just the desirability of the project.
What do you envision these units renting for on a monthly basis?
So we have a pretty balanced mix of 1, 2 bedroom units. We have a smaller percentage of 3-bedroom units that we're including. So the smallest units being a $1,200 range, with the largest units being over $2,000 a month. And that's really all dictated by
The market.
what the market is.
I saw a pool. Is there other amenities as well?
Yeah, so we have planned a fitness center, a tenant lounge, a dog park, the courtyard pool, a grilling station, a barbecue area.
And this isn't the
And then we would
plan
have
that we're
multiple
proposing.
smaller business centers
Right.
to support the remote working.
These are developments that they have done elsewhere, which they have represented to us, that kind of reflect the level of the product they're trying to do.
Well, this is definitely a type of housing we don't have in the township. And, I've always been a fan of housing diversity. I would say I'm certainly more excited about this than the idea of putting a hotel there. And I think there was one other plan that came in once. They wanted to put an office park in there, if I remember, or office condos or something like that. I think it's a great use, but that's just my opinion.
It's one thing for sure, there is very, very limited rental opportunities in Peters Township.
Yeah, I would say just from a greater market perspective, we continue to see increasing demand for quality multifamily housing, and there's very low supply, and I think that's especially true in Peters Township. Reviewing the current housing stock and the comprehensive plan, that was identified as a guiding principle to increase the housing diversity, and we're excited about this. NIR is. We think this has a ton of potential, and not just from a site standpoint, but in activating that corridor there at the intersection of Water Dam and Route 19. But we really feel like this is going to add in a very positive way to the housing inventory in Peters and help draw in a wider range of demographic, from younger professionals who may have went away to school and they want to come back into the township, but they don't have an option, to retirees or empty nesters that are looking to downsize. I think this fills a gap that really doesn't currently exist.
Now, would this in any way help us get that traffic light at Galley and Waterdam?
We've had extensive discussions with NIR.
I saw Mr. Mudry's face light up there.
The need for an improvement in that area. And quite frankly, I find it hard to believe, given the nature of this, that they're going to be able to get a highway occupancy permit without improvements to that intersection. I don't think PennDOT would permit it. So there would be...
Of course, we thought that last time, too.
There would be a traffic impact fee that would be generated by this that could help offset some of the costs associated with that traffic signal.
I'm sure you're more, in tune with what they're proposing. Where would the ingress and egress from Waterdam Road be? Would it be like
At Lindenwood?
It would be somewhere in between Primrose and the entrance into where Grande's is, and somewhere in between there.
So-
and I think there's room.
There not being a light there, right? How are people going to make a left?
I think that the traffic will show that they're going to need to put a left turn lane in and improve the access there. And I think it's wide enough there in terms of right-of-way that can be accomplished. But we have not gotten into the traffic yet.
Well, I mean, that's got to be a nightmare.
Big item of discussion will be traffic.
Those people be coming from 19, they're not going to be taking that left.
When they come out.
To come back to 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Or you're going to go down, if there's a light at Galley, you're going to go down to Galley and go down the other way to 19.
There will be traffic improvements out there at Galley and Waterdam, as well as their entrance area on Waterdam Road.
And one of the, if this project actually moves forward, I'll guarantee you that part of that approval process will be a study by a traffic engineer that will be reviewed by our traffic engineer, and it will require a highway occupancy permit from PennDOT. So,
And how many units are we proposing?
In the range of 250 units.
253
253?
on the proposal, yeah.
And then, so we didn't really touch on this before, but as part of this development, we would also be proposing to outparse a 3/4 of an acre retail development that would likely meet all the intents of this, all this ordinance. We wouldn't be really asking for any variances on that development.
What's the angled thing off to the right supposed to be representative of?
The cross-hatching here?
No.
Yeah, so
Where the red?
yeah.
This right here?
Is that Warp
So
Park?
that's just a schematic layout, I believe, of what they were looking at
So,
initially for
to the-
for
yeah.
parking, right?
We're looking at adding additional shelter parking and tucking it in under this lower row of units on this side. So, yeah, that would be below grade, below the lowest row of units here. So I think we had 30, is that right, Lauren, 30 parking stalls or so there. We're still exploring that, but it was just an effort to try to get closer to the shelter parking requirement.
Well, my first reactions are comments you probably aren't going to like. I think it's too much for the size of the parcel. It may be distorted based on the images of the developments that you're using to show the type of structure. But to me, it's trying to put too much on too little a lot. My other comment is we don't necessarily have agreement as to what 4 stories is versus basement areas, and the fact that we let a building get built that had 5 floors to it, and that will not happen under my watch again.
but I don't think I don't think there's any question anymore because of the changes that were done to the ordinance, and the maximum height is established. The other thing about this is that's different than this property over here. That property is relatively flat, and so you don't have this large grade that causes the on the waters, the park coming down to the Allybrook Road to have, in essence, 5 floors.
But it's a sense of mass of the elements that just visually to me just seems to dominate.
So when you
Very
say that,
confined
do you
site.
mean like visibility outside of the site? Like, are you concerned that
from
this
the
would be?
perimeter of it, yeah.
So we actually, if you want to pull that video up, you could probably skip the first 20 seconds. We did just a quick 3D modeling. We flew a drone around the topography, picked it all up, and modeled the vegetation as best we could based off the species we know that are in there. And we're actually doing a drive-by to see kind of what this site would look like if you were to plop this in place. As far as grading is concerned, we haven't done a final grading plan yet, so we approximated based off the top of existing grade. Essentially, when we go to balance the site, we're going to want to balance it, which means the building's going to have to come down a little bit. So this is kind of a worst case scenario. Is there a play button?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking here.
There we go.
What road am I supposed to be in?
You're on Route 19.
So we're coming down.
Route 19
coming down
going
Route
north.
19,
You're going to make a right-hand turn shortly on to Watergate Road.
And the only reason we're leaving the vehicles in there is because when we droned it, you
Another
can actually see
crash.
the vehicles and drop them in so that you can see that you're driving at a vehicle's height. Right now, we're making the turn. You'll see I believe that's the Ace Hardware.
Yes.
We're going to be making it, just to kind of see visibility. So you should be able to see the building here. But with the existing evergreens here, provides pretty good screening for what the site's actually going to see. We're coming up on the secondary entrance to the back entrance to the loading docks for Ace Hardware. This little portion, if you could pause, is there a pause? Okay, great, perfect. So this would be basically the limits of what our proposed screening buffer would be. Everything else is existing vegetation, which matches existing what's out there. If you were to take a snapshot and go out there, with your car, you'd be able to hopefully be pretty impressed there. But what we're showing with this would be the approximate height of what we were to plant to screen really the only portion of the site you would be able to see, which is our entrance down here and then our off-street parking. There's a small parcel right here. We put a couple lights in there.
This is from Route 19.
Well, you're on Watergate Road right now.
So you're coming down.
We turn the
Watergate
corner.
Road.
You turn the corner. Yeah, you're
Primrose would be past this.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll get to Primrose, and then we'll turn around and just get another quick portion of site. So if you want to go ahead and hit play again. So this is really all you're going to see. And bear in mind, this is what the vegetation is going to look like in your first couple of years. The vegetation we pick out in the screening we would try to do our best to match what's existing. So 20 years down the road, you're really not going to see much other than your entrance. We're going to come back and
One just important the model is just a massing, so it doesn't indicate in any way what the
Finishes or anything.
finishes will be or color.
Yeah. But this is the commercial site right here. And so there will be no trees on that site because if it ever gets developed.
As you go beyond, this would essentially be cleared.
Yes.
So, however we do that, we would need to put a proposed buffer in around, or
But it wouldn't be a row of trees. It would be a building there, and there would be a parking area.
There's a bunch of storefronts.
Yeah.
yeah, potentially. If we do that as retail and we have to cut those trees down as part of the buffer, then
Yeah,
so
so
that
that line
wasn't.
of sight then to the residential buildings from there as well, I think.
So I'm sorry, what was that?
I think you lose your buffering then, once you have the storefront there. The residential,
Only part of it. Only part of it.
We could do another massing when we go through the land development process for what that retail would actually look like.
because I'm thinking from this angle, this is the angle that the residents up on, what was that, is it Saxon Drive? Whatever
King
that is.
Richard.
King
Yeah,
Richard.
I mean, that's what they're going to be looking at from there, and they sit elevated as it is.
Yeah, I know from talking with staff initially and from the plan commission, I think the takeaway there was some concern of visibility along 19 coming down and around, that this would be a towering, development that you could see from all angles. So that was kind of the intent for this exercise, is just to see, coming off of 19 down to Waterdam. We could do some other renderings at, some point later on, but that was really the intent, is to, this isn't really going to be towering, up. It's going to be.
Yeah, I think my opinion is similar to Mr. Lewis's. I was supportive of the Waters building. In hindsight, I regret it. I still, to this day, I hear complaints from residents in the area about it, that it's too much building, it's overbearing. I prefer not to go down that route again, so I guess I would be opposed to, I guess it would be the 36 unit restriction is what would cap that.
Ed, if this were condominiums as opposed to apartments, would there be different zoning ordinances and regulations that they would have to adhere to?
Be pretty much the same. 36 per building, 50% covered parking.
So if this got built like that, and then they decided 10 years from now to turn this into a co-op as opposed to rental property, there wouldn't have been any difference.
Correct.
Would they require township approval to do that?
To convert from apartments to condos? I don't think so.
Okay.
All the requirements apply to both types of residential living.
And I don't even know if we'd have the authority, but I think the only thing I can imagine we would do, as we do for other condominium developments, is to be able to look at those documents before they're.
Right.
But I'm not even sure what leverage we'd have to.
Parking would be the same, you know.
My recollection, too, I believe it's an ownership issue, and I believe there's a statute out there that we don't have local government's oversight to deny a switch to a condominium.
I just want to make sure that there's no difference between whether you go to apartments or, that was the only thing I was concerned about. But I mean, from my perspective, unlike some of my esteemed colleagues here, I voted no for the Waters Group, and I still got a lot of flack. And I tend to agree with what Mr. Steigel and Mr. Lewis have said, that I think this is just too much on that parcel. And if you recall, we said that about 8 times to the Waters Group, and they changed it and nicked away at it, but
We still got it.
they still got it. And then, so I probably would not be in support of something that was larger. Plus, I think that we passed these ordinances. Obviously, we had a reason to do that. And I don't think that we should willy-nilly repeal ordinances just to accommodate somebody. No offense, but I think they're there for a reason, and I haven't heard anything that would convince me otherwise. So I don't think I would be on board with some of this stuff. Plus, I think from a traffic standpoint, and I know we haven't gotten to that point, this is going to be a nightmare. Coming ingress and egress out of there is going to be a nightmare. That's just my 2 cents worth.
And without knowing whether any of the residents are still there from when we tried to see another parcel developed, the residents up on Giant Oaks or King Richard were very vocal when we tried to put a post office down along that corner. So I expect that there are still a number of those residents up there that would have very strong opinions of the sight line that Gary pointed out. But
One point I wanted to make in terms of the density and the size and scale is that there, even with the 36 unit maximum, if that were to be strictly enforced, you could still do a development of 250 units or more by right with the current zoning ordinance. So a developer, I don't know that it would be us because we frankly aren't interested in building that type of development, but another developer could come through by right and build 8 4-story 36 unit max buildings on the site without needing any relief or variance.
And I guess that's where I'm at, is if it could be done anyways, this at least looks really nice and adds a different feel. And I think it's your renders at least are very well done and classy. So I feel differently. I would support it.
I think the alternative, too, is, I guess, a different approach. A developer can look at this site and potentially look at it as an office retail mixed-use facility where they're going to try to maximize the footprint of their building that they have on there, and they're not going to really, that ordinance isn't going to apply, the 36 unit per building. I don't know what it is off the top of my head for office. We'd have to look further into that, but
You're right, and those are permitted uses in this district, and that would generate more traffic than apartments, and that could happen by right.
So I think we still don't have a clear understanding of how council wants to move forward. I mean, Mr. Koser, do you?
I agree with Mr. Ross. I think it's the best use you're going to get of that site. I mean, no matter what you build there, there's going to be a traffic problem, just because of the way the site's oriented and where it's located. It doesn't matter. Given the way it's zoned and given the uses that are permitted there as of right, no matter what somebody builds in there, you're going to have a traffic issue. And ultimately, the residents of King Richard, I mean, they're going to be looking down over onto something. And, I can't speak for them, obviously, because I don't live over there, but this is certainly more attractive than some of the things that could be built there and as a permitted use.
This is owned by Anthony Horrible, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, something's going to be done, and it's going to be, I don't know if we're going to have control. I'm not saying we do have control, but have even a say if they do by right. And it may not be what we want. I at least think this is well thought out for, a little bit of a different concept.
Mr. Carrasco, do you have it?
Yeah, I think I'm on the side of Mr. Ross and Kozer. I think that something like this, we don't have these type of high-scale rentals in Peters Township. That would be a nice amenity to have here. And, just what everyone's saying, the traffic is, this area is awful already, trying to get out of Ace Drive there, and then that back behind is that Rite Aid there? I mean, that's a disaster. So to add, that many more people, but a point well made. I mean, you could have someone else put in 4-story buildings. I'd rather have something like this, that's very eye appealing. So, I think I would be in favor for it, but definitely have some concerns. So.
I actually would be in favor for it also. I echo everything that Dr. Crosco just said and the rest of the guys. I do think that the area needs to be figured out with the traffic, but I liked what it looked like, and if you're going to have the similar amenities, I don't think it's something that we have for the demographic locally, so I think that it's definitely something that's been lacking, and I would be okay for it. I just, I hope that it would turn out the way that you're saying it's going to look right now, and offer the amenities of the upper, high scale to attract that population.
So based upon what I'm hearing and what we've heard from the Planning Commission, I think what we're going to do is proceed with putting the changes to the zoning ordinance in front of the Planning Commission, in front of council. People have an opportunity to make input at public hearings, and eventually this will end up back at council to take action one way or the other. So,
Were there other portions that you still needed to go to the zoning board with beyond what you're asking relief for council?
yes,
There'll be a variance or two, possibly.
yes.
I think it was the last two items we discussed.
Yeah, so the 36 unit and the shelter parking are the two zoning
Amendments.
These 4-story step back and then maximum setback that we talked about are the only two other, non-conforming.
Right.
Hey, have you decided from a time standpoint, because if you don't get that relief, do you even have to go through this process with this board and amend our ordinance? If you go there first?
Right. If in order of priority, they're all important, but the 36 unit maximum really would make this a development that we wouldn't be interested in. And so we really would like to know where we stand with that sooner than better, before we enhance our pre-development and pre-construction activities and advanced design.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just wondering from a timing standpoint, you could probably get before zoning faster than this board will take action to repeal an ordinance and change it with the public hearings we'd have to have, don't you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
We could talk about the timing of all that.
Yeah, I think to this point, we wanted to solicit the input of the Planning Commission and Council, see where we stand, and do think we need to map out, next steps.
Yeah, that's your prerogative as to how you proceed. I just throw that out there because if you ultimately would fail at that board and we change the ordinance for no reason.
Right. Understand. But if I could just, we are fully committed to this project and take this very seriously, and and we've invested a lot of time and effort, and we're excited about it, like I said. So this isn't something that we're simply just like testing the waters. We really want to see this happen.
And just lastly, so we typically don't sort of take a straw vote. None of these members, or all of them, could vote yes or no on anything that comes before them. They're not bound by some conceptual idea until they actually see it. So just so the record's clear that you can't count on that you have the votes to proceed. You may, but I just don't want you to think that that's something happened or some action was taken.
I understand.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, guys. I appreciate it. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, the next item will be audience comments. It's a chance for members of the audience to speak on a non-agenda item for up to 5 minutes. Anybody? Mr. Glasser?
Good evening, Peter Glasser, 143 Longview Drive in Peters. I've spoken before this body several times over the last few years on the same topic, and some of my neighbors have either spoken here or written to council members in the past. But we have 3 new members. There's fresh blood in here, and hopefully there might be some fresh energy available to get us some relief on this issue. Longview Drive was built almost 70 years ago and was last repaved about 30 years ago. For the past 10 to 15 years, it has been deteriorating and has gotten into terrible condition, growing worse each year. There are deep, wide potholes in the middle of the road that periodically get patched, and then after the cycle of freezing and thawing, the patches fall out, and we have even deeper and wider potholes. The sides of the roads in many sections have completely deteriorated, leaving the gravel underpinnings and dirt, which then turns into deep ruts. And in places, the road is maybe 20 to 25% narrower than when it was built. When we've asked council to rebuild the street, we've gotten a lot of responses like, well, there's no money this year, but we intend to do something about it. Or maybe we'll get to it in a few years. It's always tomorrow. Right now, I believe the plan is to get initial engineering work contracted out sometime this year, probably later, then maybe rebuild the road a year or two after that. We pay the same rate of property taxes that everybody else does. We get no break on that. We pay the same rate of wage taxes that everybody else does. But we live on a road that is worse than 95% of the development roads in this community, and it has been this way for a decade to a decade and a half. Let me be clear, this is not a problem that I have with the Public Works Department or any staff member, because they cannot spend money or undertake major projects for which council has not approved. This is a decision that resides here. This is in Ward A. Our previous Ward A representative and the other 2 who are no longer here didn't seem to be particularly concerned about rebuilding the road with any urgency. There is money to proceed with a water amusement park, not just a pool, a water amusement park. But there has been no money to be spent on Longview Drive to give us a basic, safe road. It's time for the empty promises to end. I ask you 3 new members to join with any of the veterans on the council who might be so inclined to get the job done this year, to get the engineering work let very soon, and then to get the rebuilding started in the fall before the winter so that we don't have to go through this any longer. This has been brewing for years. We paid enough taxes at the same rate as everybody else. We get no refund on our taxes. We get no break on our assessment. Okay? If you go down to the county assessment appeals office, and I have, and ask for a break, and others have, they say, well, here are your comparables. We'll give you comparables 3 streets over where the road's perfect. They don't recognize any allowance for this. You've collected the money. Please give us a good road. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. So what is the history on this?
This year, our council has budgeted money to do the engineering work needed to reconstruct this road. Because the thing that I will agree with is the condition of the road. It was taken over years ago with the understanding that it would be maintained in exactly the condition that it was taken over. And it has deteriorated to a point where you're going to have to build a new road and also address the drainage problem. So that's not a small undertaking, and we're in the process this year of letting a contract to engineer that, and then with the understanding that next year it'll be part of the road paving program. The one challenge on this road is that it is extremely long, and there is no turnaround at the end. So one of the things that Mr. Zamitis has been pretty good with, is working with people to be able to acquire the land needed for a turnaround. So if you go up to Laurel Drive, we've been successful in being able to do that. Our hope is to be able to do that on Longview as well before we undertake the project. So
When were you planning to put that out for bid for the engineering?
Sometime later this year.
Could we get that bumped, get the process moving, see what the...
We can. I don't think it would do anything to your construction schedule, though. I mean, the money is budgeted to do that next year. You know, that's the time to. I don't know, Paul. Is it worth getting into the whole minimum maintenance rate discussion?
I mean, I don't think we...
He's saying no.
No.
But there, as you guys are well aware, there's a long history with these quote-unquote minimum maintenance roads that we took over back in the 70s. And
And
the
they're
game
not,
plan-
so you know, they're not the same as our regular roads in terms of the obligation the township has. That's the problem. And we're trying to address that.
Are we going to have to acquire property, though, for a turnaround or something?
we're going to have to negotiate with the person who owns the house at the end of the
And
street.
aren't we already talking, didn't you already talk to this person?
We looked at this years ago and were unable to do that. I think that Mark and I are going to revisit that.
And if not, we have the ability to take it, right?
Yes, we do. And I will
How long
tell
is that process?
Well, that process doesn't take long. I don't know that we're going to have to go down that. I mean, because once
Down that road.
down that road, yeah, excuse that pun. But I will be surprised that we can't come to some understanding
Well,
with regard
I
to
think the quicker we can move this along, the better.
it.
Because I know that, you know, Pete's been in here numerous times, and, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I think we need to do something.
But that's a separate issue. I don't think that should hold up the rebuilding of the road. We've lived without a turnaround. That road's been in existence since the early 50s, and we've lived without it, okay? And yes, it would be nice to have, if you can come to agreement with a homeowner, I hope you don't.
Well, I'm not saying we need to do that, but if we're gonna do the engineering, we might as well look into that issue now too.
But that shouldn't be something that holds it up anymore.
I'm not saying it's gonna hold it up, I'm just saying we should look into it and see if we can resolve it that way.
I agree with you, but if you can't, I really hope that's not going to delay it.
I don't think so, because if we had to take it, it's gonna take a lot longer. So no, in my mind, we wouldn't delay it. I'm just saying, if we're gonna go all out, let's just go all out and see where everything is.
Yes.
I'm not advocating that we do that, and then if we can't get it, we're gonna delay the project more. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if we can speed up the timetable, talk to these people, and get it all together, that's better. Then we'd be ready to go.
If you can, but I mean, keeping in mind that you're talking about taking a piece of somebody's driveway, their shrubs, their front lawn, trees that have taken 50 years to grow, they may not want to sell for pennies per foot.
No, I understand what you're saying.
But we
I'm
need
not
to
saying
have a
it's gonna hold up
discussion.
the thing, though.
But we need to have this discussion, and we have not had this discussion.
We should just
recently.
have, that's what I'm saying. If we're gonna maybe move up the bidding, the engineering bid, then we should probably be talking to these people now so we know what it is, you know, because if they say, yeah, then you might as well have them engineer it. If they don't, then we just do the road and deal with that later. We can always add something on the end if we need to at some point in time. But I know that it's tough to get, you know, all that stuff done on garbage trucks and all that.
Well, when you look at how far vehicles have to back up that road, this is not.
Oh, I
a
know.
safe
We've had
condition.
this discussion
Yeah,
before.
it's not a safe condition.
Okay.
Anybody else in the audience, any comments?
I do have one letter that was sent in by Mrs. Merrill.
Oh, okay.
Dear council members, as I cannot attend tonight's meeting, I'm sending these to be read and included as comments to the minutes. Tonight you'll hear a presentation from Al Nyer requesting that you change 2 items in our existing ordinance to accommodate their plan to build a multi-building apartment complex off of Gabian Water Dam Roads. Normally, council does not take action on presentations. However, you will be asked to render an opinion, and I would like to deny these requested change. The ordinance has been written for a reason, and while we may not envision a plan of this size ever coming to Peters Township, we need to consider whether We even won a plan of this type and size coming to Peters Township. While watching the Planning Commission meeting, I found Mrs. Gorbel's concerns to be valid, particularly about 36 units per structure density, and suggested that you hesitate before you make these changes. Likewise, the 50% covered parking requirement should not be disregarded lightly. The developer will cite comprehensive plan as an invitation to add this type of high-end diversity housing. I would disagree. While an apartment building is not a bad thing, this complex is excessive and very high density and does not actually beckon to a diverse group. During the 2011-2012 comprehensive planning process, we spoke about two groups of residents we hope to retain: young residents who are entering their adult career life stage, and senior residents who want to downsize and age in a place here in the township. While the apartment complex may attract a younger crowd if the price points are reasonable, which is in question, it is unlikely that they will attract many of our seniors who are seeking a home or a more modest way to spend their housing dollars. Two other concerns about the development: the amount of additional traffic at this location will be substantial, and the intersection of Galley-Water Dam Road will soon need a traffic light. It is my opinion that Al Nyer decides to proceed, they should match their plan to our existing ordinance requirements, and they should be required to pay for the traffic improvements. Retail is noted, and more commercial would be welcome to the tax base, but it's an important commitment and established timeline for when that will be constructed. Thank you for your attention to my comments.
You know who Mrs. Corbell is? Was she a resident, or is she an expert, or?
Who?
Mrs. Corbell, she must have been at the Planning Commission meeting.
Oh, it's Rochelle Corbel is our Planning Commission alternate.
Oh, okay.
She's on the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Unfinished business, there is none. New business, first item will be a request from James Manalakis for departure from regulations regarding wall height for property located at 3836 Washington Road.
So James Manalakis owns a 2.2-acre property located at 3836 Washington Road, and is seeking township approval for a modification request from the township's grading ordinance related to a proposed retaining wall. As shown in the picture below, this property is immediately adjacent to the plaza where MedExpress Urgent Care is located.
Wasn't he here a couple years ago? Or was it a different person? Was
It was the same parcel, and at that time, council tabled this and said that he needed to go back and have a traffic study done, particularly with regard to what the impact of this development would be through cut-through traffic that might come down onto Old Oak. That's been done, and I think everybody's convinced that that's not going to be a problem. You know, that people aren't going to use this somehow to bypass
The traffic light.
the crossroads. So he's back asking the same request for consideration of a wall that exceeds the height that is stipulated in our ordinance. Our ordinance requires that walls only be 6 foot tall, and then you can step them back 3 feet and go up 6 feet and step them back. You can't do that on this property because of all the topographic challenges. There's a creek on the bottom, there's a floodway. It's a very tight piece of property. So I think at the maximum height, the wall that's being proposed is 23 feet. So.
Well, I said that back then. I didn't have a problem with it because I don't see how else you're going to develop this parcel, quite honestly. I mean, the other alternative is we're going to leave it empty like the parcel next door and someone's going to stick a billboard on it.
So is it the parcel to the left? Like if you're going down, if you're off going up 19 and like you make that left-hand turn and that's where the billboard is it
Right next to the billboard.
on the
Across
right?
Old Oak from the billboard.
No.
If you would look at what Chipotle is,
Yeah.
MedExpress,
Yeah.
next parcel over to the right, before you get to Old Oak Road.
Okay.
Before the Volkswagen.
Yeah, that's, you can do something on that?
Hypothetically. Wall, yes.
Wow.
Do we know what they're planning to do there?
That's the wall for.
I would assume it's going to be something that's like it's already up there.
This is not the Jim Matalakis, I remember.
Joseph Young, Harshman CE Group. Initially, what we're showing is a commercial building for maximum build-out, so it is going to be some commercial type of use. What we would present to you in the form of a final plan is a grading plan that could be done under a separate submission. So we're not 100% sure how much parking there would actually be, but what is shown is the maximum amount that could be done.
This would be a single floor building, like where Med Express and all that is. It's
Correct.
It'd be the same kind of thing.
I also wanted to add to the 23-foot wall height. At the maximum height, as you're driving south on 19, the top of the wall would actually be about level, or a little bit below eye level, what you would see. So it is 23 feet high, but it's in a hole in the property.
There's like a big divot in there.
Right, so you're not, the only time you're actually going to be staring at a 23-foot wall is if you're coming in off of Old Oak as you're climbing up from 19. You're really not even going to see it from 19, quite honestly, because it's going to be pretty much mostly below road level.
That's correct.
So you're not proposing to build it up, you're going to drop down and then be down, okay.
Correct.
But again, anybody driving up Old Oak is going to see this wall.
Oh, right.
How far is that from that? There's some residential property right back in there. Is it far enough away that?
There's a stream in between, if you could pan out just a tad.
Yeah, I can't.
The other map. The other map, or the other.
There's a stream to the extreme right, where you see where the,
Use the little marker.
there's a house there across the stream.
Yes, and wasn't that the individual who showed up at the
Yes.
planning commission?
Well, it didn't show up at the plan. They sent an email in.
That was considered the plan.
But
So 19
Frank,
down at the bottom, right?
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I
And we're
didn't
sure,
have this on
we're sure if he
purpose.
puts this in, he'll be able to connect to the adjoining shopping center.
there is a cross-access joint agreement between property owners to shared driveway access.
And I would point out to you that our ordinance requires that all commercial properties along Route 19 interconnect so that people can get out of traffic.
Is there going to be direct access to Old Oak from this parcel?
Yes.
Correct.
Right,
Do you
yeah. If you look,
envision any problems with that?
That actually, I can there was a problem with that, the way we had shown it 2 years ago. Working with Mr. Mudry, we've gotten the site distance that was required.
Because that's a weird curve there.
Yes. We shot the site distance. We had to trim branches. So we ended up having to shift the entrance down about 50 feet from where it used to be. So what you're seeing now complies with the traffic requirements.
If you come up there if you came out of there and went up to 19, can you make a left there?
No, going to make a right.
It's not restricted.
Yeah.
There's no restrictions there, but it's very difficult to do.
Could we make that a restriction? It wouldn't have anything to do with this, but, I mean, to me, that seems pretty dangerous.
Because you can't make a right out of Med Express, I mean, you can't make a left out of Med Express now either.
It's a right in, right out.
Yeah.
That's what,
Wait.
I mean, I would
You're saying
think,
do the same thing.
I mean, try to get it off of there. I mean, most people are going to go the other way and come out way down the other end, or go back and go down and come out down there to the sanitary place.
You'd have to have a death wish to try to make a left turn out of Old Oak.
I would think that's pretty difficult, but like,
Because
you know, there's going to
you're
be
up on the
somebody
highway by the time
that's
you-
going to want to do it, you know? And then the other thing is I don't make sure that when they do the agreement, you know, for the access, that, you know, everybody signs it so we don't run into that problem that we had at Jimmy's old building with the new, whatever that other group was. Remember that? I assume that went away because I never heard of it again.
But you don't know what type of businesses are going to go in there yet?
Commercial.
Do you
It was just going to be left undeveloped just so he could try to sell the property itself, but it having the wall and the bridge and all that stuff, it would just be a flat.
There really, we aren't, he wants to, right now, it's basically unusable. So he wants to develop it enough. So everything you see here, the bridge, the road going up the hill, and the wall, along with the grading required, so the proposed grades in the back and up to the wall would be done. The parking lot and the building would not be done initially. at that point, I think Jimmy would want to try to sell it to a developer, and it would have to comply with whatever the zoning requirements are, along with whatever size requirement would fit the buildable space.
Is that a separate parcel from the other buildings?
Yes,
It is?
yes.
Okay.
And the only access would be there wouldn't be an access off of Old Oak. There would be the only access off of 19.
There's access off of Old Oak.
That is an access.
So
okay.
19,
And then you could go up and turn like where you go into Med Express?
Yeah.
And you could get
And then
there.
go, yeah.
this is 19 South right here, and this is Old Oak. So the main access point would be off of Old Oak, about 250 feet from 19.
I think it's more for coming out. Like I think if you came out that way, you would end up going all the way down and coming out way down on 19 when it's.
Mark, one of the concerns, and I'm not in favor of the higher
West McMurray Road.
limit
I mean, I don't
being
envision too many people coming up
addressed on the-
making a right, because you can just go out.
You're going to cause problems for a
Or
person
express
in
it.
minutes.
Maybe that's where that marijuana dispensary can go. What's that? That's my place.
Well, what I wanted to say was,
I heard that.
I've been opposed to higher walls throughout
They've got those things.
my term here on council, and the caution I'm going to have, because I probably am sensing that the development of this might take place, is that we would not allow the building to be constructed immediately behind the wall to avoid the foundries problems that existed down in Little Washington.
That's correct. The way they're laying this site out, I mean, the building itself would be in virgin ground. They cut way in the back corner of it. The building is, like I said, on virgin ground, and then it doesn't get to a fill condition until you get out close to the wall.
But that would have to be a condition that I think would be implicit in whatever action we take.
Oh, you could make that a condition.
Right now?
Yes. In fact, that would make sense. That
Oh,
if you're
okay.
concerned about that, you would want to include that in the conditions. to
So,
grant
what was your comment, Mr. Lewis? You
Well,
want?
that the siting of the building would have to be on native ground or virgin ground, as Mark.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the request for the departure of regulations regarding the wall height for this property, and make it a condition of any further development of that any building and parking area be built on virgin ground. Is
Yes.
that what you said?
And I would.
Well, yeah, I would leave parking out.
Okay.
Yeah,
So then I'll strike that and just leave it that the building.
Yeah.
be built.
In addition, I'm recommending that the 7 conditions that were proposed by the Planning Commission be included, and that they be modified at least so that Condition 1 requires approval of the township of the proposed block design. They're proposing to use a Ready Rock product, and that can have all kind of different kind of looks. The other thing is, I think you should modify to state that a fence and/or a guide rail will be may be needed as determined by the township engineer, because at that height of the wall, it may be that you have not a guide rail isn't enough protection. So
I'll add that to my motion.
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Any other comments from council, audience?
Do we have any visual pictures of what this would look like?
We do have one. It's in the...
Visuals? Did you include the visuals in there?
I don't have a rendering of a building, if that's
No, the wall.
It was the wall.
What's the
you know,
wall
I don't
gonna look like?
Oh, that's it. I think that's it.
Page
Well,
48 on the right.
What they're suggesting is that the wall is going to look like a Versalock wall. But what the product they're intending on using apparently is Ready Rock, which I can totally understand, and it has the ability to give you that segmented block look. And what I'm saying is you should leave it up to the township to approve that block design, so that that 23-foot wall is something that's visually.
It's on the bottom of the page on 48.
Go this way.
Page 48.
Got to go to the right.
Zoom.
It's not unattractive.
I see. So I want to go back.
Depending on which design. The only reason I know anything about Ready Rock is that the architect for the aquatic center is, I've gone on a world tour of Pittsburgh looking at Ready
Page
Rock.
48.
Yeah.
I don't think it's moving at all. Oh, there it is.
Here, Frank, here.
You can't navigate a mouse?
Okay. It wasn't working there for a second. I saw it when I reviewed the, there it is. I saw it when I reviewed the docket, but yeah.
Is there any other?
Oh, you probably need a bar when I walk
All right, so there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, carries 6-1. Second item will be
Thank you.
appointment of appointment to the library board.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Yvonne Beverina Weaver to the library board for a term lasting until December 31st, 2024.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Ryan, Ms. Ryan will make the notification.
Yeah. Yep.
Item C, appointment of student representatives to the Environmental Quality Board.
Move we appoint Cassidy Griffith and Grace Urban to be the student advisory board members on the EQB for a term ending on September 1st, 2023.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries 7-0. Item D, award of a bid to purchase 2 truck-mounted brine dispensing systems.
So the 2022 budget includes an appropriation of $60,000 to acquire 2 truck-mounted brine dispensing systems. These are used to treat roads in the winter to mitigate icy conditions. One will replace an existing truck-mounted system that was acquired in 2007. The second is an additional unit to increase our capacity to do this kind of thing. These are being purchased under the CoStar's Cooperative Purchasing Program, and Stevenson Equipment has provided a quote of $28,077 per system. If we order these, we may have them in time for next winter. So
It's within budget, correct?
yes, it is.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we purchase the brine dispensing systems.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other comments from
Well,
council?
I'd only like to say that I've been more than satisfied with the effort of what that accomplishes. So.
Yes.
I like it when I come out and I see it's already been sprayed on the night before.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries 7-0. Item E is going to be resolution electing the standard allowance for revenue loss as provided for under the final rule governing the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, part of the American Rescue Plan.
So as I had explained previously, what this allows to do is give us maximum flexibility to be able to expend those additional funds. It's my recommendation that the council elect to adopt the standard allowance by adopting resolution 2122.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries 7-0. Item F, resolution authorizing the destruction of records.
Move we approve Resolution 02-02-22 authorizing the destruction of municipal records in accordance with the Municipal Records Manual issued by the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You should be an auctioneer.
Carries. Item G, revised 2022 minimum municipal obligation.
Yeah, having reviewed the minimum municipal obligation form that we had submitted to council in the fall, the representative from Principal, our pension administrator, brought to our attention that the total amortization cost was significantly lower than what we stated. This has the effect of reducing our obligation towards pensions in 2022, and you do not adopt this. You just acknowledge that, in fact, it's been presented to you.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries 7-0. Item H, pre-qualification of bidders for fire station number 3.
Ryan's going to help handle this.
Yeah, so we, as council authorized at the reorganization meeting on January 3rd, we solicited pre-qualification sheets from general contractors for the construction of Fire Station Number 3. We received it was actually last Monday, we received 18 pre-qualification sheets. Of those 18, 5 firms did not meet all the qualifications to be considered qualified for the job. The remaining 13, which I've listed in my memo, all are pre-qualified as per our standards, and I would recommend that council pre-qualify them as well. They have the requisite experience and the requisite ability to complete the project.
So moved.
Yeah.
So moved and seconded. Any other questions, concerns from council? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So what our process will be going forward on this project is these drawings are complete. They've been reviewed by the building inspector to make sure they're in compliance with the building code, and so they're ready to go out to bid. So our intention is to send this out to bid right away.
Is McClure vacated?
They have essentially vacated. They still have some equipment on that site. We're going to be doing a fire exercise inside of that building, so one way or the other, they'll have vacated.
All right, next item will be authorization for the appropriate township official to execute a contract with J.D. Montgomery Scott to serve as an independent municipal advisor for the issuance of general obligation bonds.
So the fire station's going to require borrowing funds to be able to finance its construction. The first step in that process is for the township to employ the services of an independent municipal financial advisor to help us make decisions on how to structure that bond to the best benefit of the township. Jenny Montgomery Scott has served in this capacity in 2016, 2019, and 2021, and particularly since they are so familiar, given the most recent bond issue, it makes sense to be using them. They not only help us in terms of structuring this, they will also help us through the process of obtaining bond counsel and paying the agent. But again, since we've been out to bid on those services so recently, it makes sense at some future date. We're probably going to suggest appointing the same people in that regard.
Thank you.
All right, I'll make a motion that council authorize the appropriate township official to execute a municipal advisor services agreement with J.D. Montgomery Scott.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any other concerns?
The only thing is, has that been reviewed by the solicitor?
I've not seen it. Although Paul typically doesn't send that over.
Yeah, I was going to say, but I can send it over before we execute
Do you
it.
mind if we just have him review that, Frank? Can you add that to your motion?
That's
That's not a problem.
All right, thank you.
Anything else from council?
I will be abstaining.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
One abstention.
6-0, one. Payrolls and bills.
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the payroll and bills. I find them to be in order. I move we approve the same. Okay, people, we did this last time. I know that I was the one that seconded Monica for 2 years.
For the
So please,
first
somebody second.
For the first time since I've been on council, I'll second.
Thank you. Starting to think you guys don't trust my review of the payroll and bills or something. Huh?
Any other questions or concerns at this point?
Oh, for Pete's
Okay,
sake.
seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it carries 7-0. Correspondence, letter from EQT, standard letter there, no well pad, it's going to be for the bill. 8 minutes, anything anybody wants to discuss on the minute?
Allison, why don't you tell us about your first experience with Shakehog, or have you not had it yet?
I have not had it yet. It's on Thursday.
Yeah.
The suspense is building.
How are you going to get through the next 3 days?
Yeah, really.
All right, miscellaneous, PennDOT public officials briefing.
Yes, the project for the intersection at East McMurray Township of Bebop Road has moved forward in terms of the design. PennDOT would like to hold a public officials briefing. This is going to be done virtually. They've offered 4 dates. Certainly the township staff's going to be present. If council wants to be present, they will accommodate that as well. I know their preference is to do this during the day, but if you want, they will do it in the evening. So you need to pick a date and a time that works.
Well, I'm the one that has the most difficult times during the day, but if it can be done virtually, I guess that doesn't trouble me.
Yeah, I can make any of these work.
Doesn't matter to me.
No, me neither.
In which case, we're picking March 15th, and I'm going to suggest that it be in the afternoon at 2 p.m. And we'll see what PennDOT says.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good. Gas line replacement on East
Oh,
Montgomery.
no, we got more dates to look at. The Secretary for the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources would like to come to Peters Township to do an official presentation regarding the $631,000 grant we received. That grant, under that program, is one of the largest ones that has been given in the state of Pennsylvania. Given its significance to DCNR, the Secretary would like to come and actually make a check presentation or something like that on Tuesday, March 21st at 2 p.m., and she will be here in person. So I'm just telling you, if you can put that on your council.
We'll make sure one of us is.
Yeah, we need to have somebody from council. It just
I mean,
isn't.
we'll make sure Gary's here because he really wants to build that aquatic center.
But,
so he
you
should
know,
get the check.
the other.
March 21st is Monday.
Yeah, I was going to say you got the wrong date up there.
Oh, excuse me. It's March 21st, though.
So it's a
I'll
Monday.
confirm that. But I think it's March 21st. The other thing about this, I think it was Mr. Curry had asked me a question. Have we exhausted all of the grant programs that are out there in relation to the aquatic center? This grant application was so well received by DCNR. What we're being told by the individual who heads up the Southwest division of DCNR is that we are to apply again, and for this grant cycle. And he believes, given the quality of the application, that it may well qualify for a second significant grant. And so one of the things, as long as council's okay with this, you have to adopt a resolution to give us permission to file the grant. My intention is to bring that in front of council at the next meeting and get authorization to apply for an additional grant.
Is this a pass-through from the feds, or is this?
No, this is coming. This is money coming from the state.
What's our tally at right now with grants for this thing?
$2,831,000.
And I'll be honest with you, when we started this whole process, if anybody would have told me that we could have received that much money, I would have been surprised. And a large part of that, of course, goes to Natalie Mahalik in terms of that money from the capital budget. But this grant, this is all Michelle Harmel. And her relationship with DCNR, I think, has served the township well.
Do we have any? Go ahead.
No.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask if we had received anything yet on the operating costs on the revised facility.
Well, that's one of the discussions I want to have with council is, and I think Dr. Prosco brought this up, we need to come up with a strategy on how to move forward with the decision-making process on the aquatic center. So what I intend to do is at the next council meeting is to put in front of you a proposal as to how to move forward, which would include that kind of discussion. Because, again, from my perspective, I think where you're going to get the best information is having those two groups that have offered proposals to manage the pool to tell you that, because that's what they do. So,
And those two groups are?
one of them is the YMCA of Pittsburgh. The other is a group called Sports Facilities Management. They manage recreational facilities of all sorts all across the country.
And I'll just reveal the fact that the current chairman of the YMCA is a personal friend of mine, and I would probably feel obligated to recuse myself from a selection if that is the direction it goes. But
In prior meetings, we had total grants over $3 million. So are we still waiting for other grants to come in?
We have received grants from 3 sources, and they total $2,831,000.
Okay.
That would be the big one, right? And then this, what, the $500,000?
You got $631,000 from DCNR, and the other one from
200,000 from LSA.
LSA. Yeah.
From the LSA was the other?
200,000, yes.
How big do you think this next one could be if you did get it?
I think it could be as much as $500,000.
The presentations by the Y and whatever the other group was, is that something you think you can fit into a council meeting?
No.
Okay. So we're in a workshop at some point.
It's going to be a workshop. I think you need at this point, again, we have three new members of council. We've been spending a lot of time talking about the pool, but you haven't been here for those meetings because you haven't been on council. I think we need to go back and start with some of the information from the beginning so that everybody's working on the same thing.
Yeah.
I have another date. They're working on the strategic plan. They would like to do a interview of all of council. It's going to be a virtual meeting either on February 21st, 22nd, 23rd at 7 p.m. in the evening.
What time's 7 o'clock?
Yep.
21st would be a holiday for some people called President's Day.
Yeah.
It's no longer one for me because we had to accept another alternative, which is already passed.
I don't want to do the 22nd. It's my anniversary.
George Washington's birthday.
Do we all
Plus,
need
it's
to be
George
there?
Washington's
What's that?
Do we all?
The 22nd.
It's a Zoom meeting.
It's a Zoom meeting.
I can't do the 23rd. But
I cannot either.
Either other day.
I could do the 21st or 22nd.
Which is fine with me.
21st, does that work for everyone?
Yeah, that works.
Sure.
Okay.
Next Monday.
Get used to it.
The gas companies continued in its replacement of gas lines. As you'll recall, they did a project at that included the intersection of East McMurray, Bebout, Thompsonville Road. They're going to be extending that work north from that location up to Country Brook. Their preference is to do this work during the day. They believe they have permission from PennDOT to do that. They're asking council if they have a preference, whether the work is done during the day or the evening.
When are they going to do it? Did they give you a time frame?
They did not.
Typical PennDOT's
The whole-
9 to 3.
It's part of a whole master project they have going up like Snowberry and the Country Brook with some lines. And I know that they intend to start in April. The work on East McMurray, I think they were going to wait until school was out so we didn't
Yeah.
interfere with the buses. I'll confirm that.
That was a question.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
confirm that. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
But in this case, I think working during the day actually works better up there.
And whatever gets it done and is the quickest, I'm all for that.
When you mentioned the gas company, it kindled in my mind trying to get a recap of what had transpired along the trail behind our former councilman's yard and how that all happened and how it came to be resolved.
Well, it isn't resolved yet. They've only suspended work for the winter. But what it is simply a slide that's occurred behind that one individual's house. I think his attempt to resolve that for himself only exacerbated the problem, and that's why you have such a large project in there for the gas company. Would you agree with that assessment?
I think it's so large because there's no access either. Their easement is through the backyards of all those properties on Saratoga, so that's.
And we've not granted easement rights down through the trail to get back in there either.
They don't.
No,
Their
they
preference
haven't.
is not to use the trail, so.
But a lot of the local residents in that area wonder how the township was uninformed or uninvolved in the original erection of that.
Because it's not our issue. To be honest with you, I mean, it's not our issue in terms of it's across an easement owned by the utility company, and their responsibility is to maintain that.
Well,
So
but the construction of the Gabian retaining structure.
Oh, well, that's a different story altogether, and I would agree. This was another one of these cases where work was being done without consultation to the township. We don't see everything that happens in people's backyards, and yes, there should have been a permit for that, and we would not have issued it.
Well, it's also in our front yard, right, going down the trail, so.
Yeah, I understand that. Yep.
It's not much of an answer for the,
No, I don't know what to tell you.
thank you.
And sharpshooter update?
Yes, there have been 6 shifts for the under the sharpshooter program. They've taken 60 deer in those 6 shifts. All of those have been within a quarter mile of the roadways that have high levels of deer-related traffic accidents. So,
Paul, I sent you an email to you and you didn't respond. In the permit, and Mr. McLaughlin brought this up, there is a requirement that we have some type of anti-beating policy in place that we're strictly enforcing. How are we doing that? Do we need an ordinance on that?
yeah, I think you take on that obligation by virtue of the fact that you applied for the permit. The permit's up there. I'll be honest with you, we can post this on the website, but I don't know how you're going to go out and enforce that. I just don't know.
We had that thing with the feral cats up in the park. Whenever we posted or whatever, and it didn't make any difference. People were still
But at the very least, I think we need to post something. Otherwise, we're just
Not in compliance.
Well, you know what?
condition of
Yeah.
state permit.
Yeah, we can do that. I'll have Tom do that tomorrow. I mean, there's a section on the website right now that talks in great length about the deer calling program.
Right, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
I'll make sure that that's on there.
Have we had any non-participant calls of panic over?
That makes sense.
None.
If it's a requirement, then we have to have something.
That's good.
Somewhere that says that.
So they should be done another. They killed 60 already. They should be done
100 and
120.
Yeah,
They're halfway there.
I thought we heard 70, but.
I think
That was a goal. But
They have
they got
120 tags.
the permit itself, I think, is for 120.
That's correct.
Well, they got 120 tags, and it's 14th of the month, so they're right on pace.
All right, request to use a police vehicle for the Shakehog accident reconstruction program.
So we participate with other municipalities in Shakehog in the accident reconstruction program. The officers who do accident reconstruction have a large amount of equipment that they need to haul at the sites. And up to this point, somewhat in one community has donated a vehicle that has been used for that. That vehicle is to the point where it's no longer suitable to be used. What Chief Grimes would like to do is to take one of the vehicles that is going to go out of service and use it for that program. I just want you to be clear, though, that vehicle may not be parked in our lot, nor may it be always driven by one of our employees. It could be driven by other employees. I don't think that this is necessarily a problem from a liability standpoint, because what you're talking about is other police officers, and we'll have them added to our driver's list. So
what happens? They're on different shifts. I guess somebody's on call with them.
Yes, I think there are 3 people who, 3 officers, and I don't think it's necessarily one of ours. There are 3 officers in the program who are the primary call-out, and then they bring this vehicle out, and they're supplemented by individuals who are trained in this. You have 2 officers who participate in this program. I can tell you we've had them on our or larger accidents on a number of occasions. So it's a program that I think is well worth supporting.
So just depending on who's on call at that time.
Yeah, that's where, yeah, the vehicle may be parked over at Mount Lebanon or Upper St. Clair or Bethel Park or somewhere else.
You need
at
a
any one time.
motion for this, or just?
I just need a consensus that you're okay to do that before I go out and do it.
Okay. Next agenda, anybody have anything for the next agenda? Okay. This will adjourn, we do have an executive session.
Yes, we do.